Alive on the Mounjaro, it's on the pen alive, with your host David Knapp.
Thank you, Claptrack, and happy Tuesday night. Welcome to On the Pen. I'm Dave Knapp, man on the Mounjaro. That's why I'm here. You are on the pen. Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Mounjaro, Zepbound. That pen. That's why you're here, and I hope that you're all doing well. We're here to share tonight a special edition of On the Pen. Usually we're doing On the Pen on Thursday nights, but we like to switch it up from time to time because we actually get to see some people that we don't normally get to see, A, but B, sometimes there's just news that precludes us from doing it on the night that we're normally doing it. Sorry, I got to fix an issue here on YouTube. Is that better, YouTube? Hopefully that's all right. But we're covering the Eli Lilly earnings call. And so it is with great pleasure that I welcome you all to this special edition of On the Pen. We've got our friends on TikTok tonight. We've got our friends over on YouTube and Twitter as well. Still echoing. Let's see here. Let me make sure that we're all good here. I don't know why it would be echoing still. Let me know in the chat on YouTube if the audio is all right. Let me know. No echo here. Okay. All right, cool. So yeah, we're gonna get going and we're gonna act like it's all good. So hopefully it is. Thank you. But a special edition tonight of On the Pen where we're gonna cover the weekly or the quarterly earnings call from Eli Lilly, which was also a 2024 forward-facing call, meaning they share some things financially that they're expecting for the year. And so there's just a lot of stuff in here to unpack, and I can't wait to do it with you here. I'm going to pull up my notes here. We're going to get going. There's so much to cover. And so what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to go through the Zepbound, the Mounjaro, the Tirzepatide news that there is, the Retatrutide news, the Orforglipron, and even, yes, Mazdutide news that there is. Out of the earnings call from the first part of the earnings call. But as you may know, if you followed an Eli Lilly earnings call before, you get a question, and this happens with all of the publicly traded companies on these earnings calls. They take a question and answer from investment houses, and that's really where you get some interesting stuff. We heard some reaction from Eli Lilly on the Novo Nordisk acquisition of Catalent, which was maybe the most fascinating part for me. And so let's without further ado, let's get into it. If you're new here tonight, put an N in the chat next to your name. Let me know that you're new here. I'd like to welcome you by name as we get rolling here. But tonight, let's talk about Zepbound. So Zepbound, they kind of recapped. Sarah, welcome. Nikki, welcome. Thank you for being here. Good to have you here. Zepbound obviously received regulatory approval in the U.S. in Q4 of 2023. Montana, welcome. Annette, welcome. And that was a huge deal. One of the reasons that it was a big deal, Yvonne, Stacy, welcome. Thank you for being here. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Lily, welcome. It's a big deal because first of all, it's the first weight loss drug, the first, I should say, obesity, chronic weight management drug ever approved by Eli Lilly. And it's the first of its kind in that it is a dual agonist. So you get that extra GIP component. And so it's the first of its kind, and it's the first from Eli Lilly. And no surprise, you've seen 40,000 scripts per week written in January, which is insane, up from 25,000 in December. You saw actually in December, they reported $176 million, hey Sabrina, in sales of Zepbound, which is absolutely fascinating. So let's get into What else we learned about Zepbound? They said that a third of those who are insured have coverage for Zepbound, but or a third of the insurance programs have Zepbound covered, but the employer opt-in remains the big hurdle to get over, and that's a difficult challenge getting employers on board with this, and that's really where we have to put the pressure on the companies that we work for, let them know that we need obesity coverage on our insurance plan. So if you are frustrated at your lack of coverage, it's probably not your insurance, it's your employer who chooses to opt in or to opt out of that coverage. And so again, we need to be advocating with our HR people, with our benefits coordinators to make sure that we get that added for next year, right? So that's the big hurdle to climb with Zepbound. And what was interesting is we learned in this call, so here's some breaking news, probably that most of you who did not follow the call are not aware of this, that Eli Lilly actually made a distinct decision not to rebrand Mounjaro overseas. So we went back and forth into some of the videos that I did about whether Mounjaro would rebrand for weight loss, and they did in the United States, but overseas they're not. And they did get into that in the Q&A session, which we'll cover the Q&A section in a separate part later on. Mounjaro, what did we learn about Mounjaro? Well, this was the most fascinating thing that I learned about Mounjaro, and that's in Q4 of 2022. I'm going to get this number wrong because I didn't make an exact note of what it was, but under 200 million, let's call it, right? Between 100 and 200 million in sales in December of 2022. Any guesses at what Mounjaro sales were in Q4 of, this was Q4 of last year versus Q4 of 2023. Any guesses? So it went from about 175 million to $2.2 billion. Yeah, some good guesses. Golden Liz was right on the money with $2 billion. So they went from literally 200 million to 2 billion in a year. And that is just absolutely insane. Insane amounts of money being spent on Mounjaro. And the thing is, with all those copay assistance cards expiring, and now we're into the ones that don't cover a whole lot, they're all considered paid scripts now, and they are just raking it in on Mounjaro. So obviously that showed in a lot of their numbers. They expanded patient access in the US over the last year with Mounjaro, achieving 90% access across commercial Part D. Now it's actually against the law for Medicare to cover obesity medication. So we're not talking about Zepbound here, we're talking about Mounjaro. And Mounjaro achieved 90% access across commercial Part D. And one of the things that we continue to hear on these earnings calls is how some of these, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, some of these trials that they're doing are really designed to help people with Medicare Part D to be able to get access to Mounjaro through the comorbidity trial. So we'll talk a little bit later about the studies that they're doing in heart failure, the studies that they're doing in obstructive sleep apnea and osteoarthritis. If they can get the indications for these comorbidities, that is going to be your backdoor way into getting Mounjaro on Part D without having to wait for TROA to get passed, which I don't think anybody is holding their breath for, too much at this point, waiting on Congress to do anything. Obviously, they've got some bigger fish to fry right now, too. So interesting stuff. So we're just going to talk broadly about the supply of Tirzepatide. So we'll just talk about, I agree. Stacy said that's a law that should be changed. Absolutely. With Medicare, the reason that they actually implemented those laws was back in the 90s when they had those stimulant drugs that were weight loss medications. That's basically all they had, right? And there were people developing heart issues. So you can imagine the older population, many of them have cardiac-related comorbidities. They didn't want them getting on these stimulant medications and struggling. So it's an old, the law is a dinosaur at this point, and so hopefully they can get that changed, right? But they're also acknowledging the fact that if everybody who qualified for a GLP-1 who is on Medicare right now, it would probably bankrupt Medicare pretty fast. So they've got to kind of figure that out. Our government should have the ability to arbitrate the cost of these medications like other countries do, but we shall see. Don't want to get too far on a rabbit hole there, but just so you know, if you're on Medicare and you have diabetes, you should have pretty good access to Mounjaro. If you're on Medicare and you don't have access to Mounjaro because you're not diabetic, some of these other studies that we'll talk about are going to be your backdoor into getting that prescription. There's going to be a lot of talking tonight. So about the supply. So we're talking the supply of Tirzepatide. The supply of Tirzepatide is pretty sketchy right now. So you have not seen Zepbound go into an FDA shortage, and I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked that nobody asked this question in the Q&A. There's 45 minutes of Q&A at the end of this call. I think that it's just all the questions are about capacity, because every single pen that is made, whether we're talking about Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, or Zepbound, every single pen that is made is sold, right? So the investors care less than we do about what they're doing to address that, right? They care more about capacity. How are you increasing capacity? Ultimately, that does lead to better supply for those of us, but more and more people are getting on the medication. This is not something they're going to catch up with anytime soon. So the supply, we learned, that they are going to, and this is some breaking news here, they are going to be recommending, Eli Lilly is, that doctors stop writing new prescriptions for Trulicity. Now, what does that do? How does that affect the supply chain for Mounjaro and Zepbound? Well, Trulicity comes in the same injector pen as Mounjaro and Zepbound do. So all three GLP-1 medications from Eli Lilly come in this quick auto-injector pen, single-dose auto-injector pen. And so by fewer people getting on Trulicity, that frees up the pens to be filled with the good stuff. So that's basically what that comes down to. That was big news. That's something that they're going to be doing to ease up the supply. But the one thing that I really was hoping that they would at least get asked today, I was hoping that they would get asked the single-dose vial question. They did not get asked the single-dose vial question. And so because they didn't get asked the single-dose vial question, that is something that hangs out there. How are they going to keep up the Mounjaro supply? Because it's what's very clear to me with Eli Lilly right now is that they're doing everything that they possibly can to prioritize Zepbound, because the last one thing that they want to do is let the supply get in front of the freight train that is the amount of scripts that are being written for Zepbound. And so I think what they're doing now is they're making a calculated decision to prioritize the Zepbound supply, which sucks for people on Mounjaro, because now the Mounjaro pens have been put in an official FDA shortage through March for the 10, the 12.5, and the 15 milligram. So that is frustrating, but you are hearing anecdotally about people who are struggling to even find different doses of Zepbound. So again, you know the drill. You need to call 5, 6, 7 pharmacies. One of the interesting things is later in the call, the question kind of came up about LilyDirect, and LilyDirect is this, they really did launch it and frame it as a direct-to-consumer, like get your hot, fresh Krispy Kremes off the line, but instead of Krispy Kremes, you're going to get your box of Mounjaro right off the line directly from Lilly. They clarified that, which we've talked about already on this channel, but that's not how it works. They've just basically created a website to try to connect you with doctors who are obesity specialists, who understand the importance of GLP-1 treatment and the treatment against chronic obesity. And so, yeah, it's not at all what it seems. The closest thing that you really get to direct-to-consumer, the only thing they really do is they cut out the wholesaler, right? It's Lilly working direct with a couple of concierge pharmacies and providing links to their preferred telehealth or preferred network of doctors. It's just basically a way to make it more frictionless for customers who learn about their medication to get it. Yes, as Join Friday says, it's LilyDirect is marketing. That's exactly what it is. Just a clever way for them to throw some money at, getting more people on the platform, right? So it's as we've been telling you for the last couple of weeks here. So that's what we hear. The one positive thing is they reached their goal last year of getting to double their capacity of pen manufacturing by the end of the year. They did announce that they hit that goal. And this is the breaking news, that by mid-year, by the middle of this year, we are going to actually see them go another 50% higher in their capacity. So that's really good news, because at the rate that they're writing Zepbound scripts, 40,000 per week, there's just not going to be a way to keep up with that. The plants that they're building in North Carolina, Concord, is slowly coming online. So that's where that capacity is going to come from. But the Germany thing, that's not going to be online for a couple of years. The expansion in Indiana isn't going to be online for a couple of years. So we're talking major increase in demand for this drug, and they're just not going to keep up with the pace. So we're going to have to get really good and really scrappy about hoarding as much as we can of these medications as we can get them. And we'll talk about that on a later time. Sue the Dude has been a member for 12 months on YouTube. He got 2 boxes in the fridge. Can he avoid a lapse in 2024? I don't know, man. So the best, it's going to be harder for people who are on the 15 milligram. My recommendation is, if your doctor will write a 90-day supply of the dose that you're on, write a 90-day supply. Then you're sitting on those pens. Even if you're going to go up in the next month, you'll have some supply to sit on. That is one of the things that you can talk to your doctor about. Kathy wants to know if I think that more people are going to go to some alternative routes, the generic routes. I think absolutely. I think absolutely people will be looking, sadly, because of the demand, people will be looking in a lot of different ways to get these medications. And Lipstick makes the point that not a lot of you can't get 90-day supply. Obviously, I understand that, but for those who can, I think it's important to consider it, right? If you're enjoying this stream, I just want to take a moment to let you know that we've got a new podcast. If you want to check out the podcast, it's called The Weekly Dose. Download that, give it a 5-star rating and review. The link is in the description of the video on YouTube. Please make sure that you check out The Weekly Dose, give it a 5-star rating and review. Also, if you're here, hit that like button, hit that like, hit that bell, hit the subscribe on YouTube, hit follow the live creator on TikTok. We would love for you to stay in touch with the video, because I make lots of little videos, right, that include a lot of the information that we're talking about right now. Montana Sulfate wants to know if the savings card will allow a 90-day prescription, and it absolutely will include that. So moving on to Orforglipron. So Orforglipron, we've been talking about Orforglipron for over a year now. And Orforglipron is the small molecule GLP-1. All right, so here's the deal with what that means. Everything else that we know about right now that is a GLP-1 or GLP-1 plus GIP like Mounjaro is a peptide. So Mounjaro, Zepbound, Tirzepatide, Wegovy, Ozempic, Rybelsus, semaglutide. You catching the deal here? Trulicity, dulaglutide, Saxenda, Victoza, liraglutide. Everything is a peptide. It's a polypeptide, long-chain amino acid, and they are short half-lives modified by these drug companies so that you only have to inject them once. Now, the difference is small molecules are made totally differently, and they're in pill form. So Orforglipron is a pill form GLP-1 that is going to get, to the level. The goal is to get it to the level of weight loss where you're let's call them lower end GLP-1s are, right? But easier to manufacture. That's the big thing. They can manufacture these in mass quantity. In fact, I'm jumping the gun just a little bit to tell you that what was revealed in this earnings call, more breaking news, Eli Lilly actually said today in the earnings call that they are moving forward with building infrastructure to manufacture Orforglipron now. The interesting thing about that is it's a total gamble on their part, because Orforglipron just is in phase 3 trials. So they are making the calculation, 2 calculations. One calculation is that it's going to be worth it for them to bring it to market even with 50 milligram Rybelsus coming online this year. 50 milligram Rybelsus, the highest has been 14. The 50 milligram Rybelsus shows weight loss right around where Ozempic and Wegovy are, right? Though it's not indicated for chronic weight management, only type 2 diabetes. So they're thinking Orforglipron will be better. 2 reasons why. Rybelsus, if you know anything about Rybelsus, which is the only oral GLP-1 on the market, first of all, it's a peptide, so it's very hard for your body to process it, because it is it is a peptide with a short half-life, right? And so there's a lot of rules. It's like the gremlin of GLP-1s because there's rules about what you can eat. There's rules about what you can drink. There's none of that with Orforglipron, the small molecule GLP-1. And so as Joint Friday says, they have profits to gamble. 100% they do, right? Right? Just like you saw Novo Nordisk just casually drop $16 billion on Catalent this week. I mean, and they're just gobbling up these biopharma companies. It's absolutely insane. They've reached a point where it's just an arms race because they're no longer hindered by money. It's not a cash flow thing anymore, which is just absolutely crazy. So Orforglipron, they're building infrastructure to make it. It's in phase 3 trials, and in 2025, we will get the readouts from the phase 3 trials of Orforglipron, which means more than likely it will be submitted to the FDA in 2025. So that is really, really good news on Orforglipron. Now let's talk about one of the favorite topics that we have to talk, even though there's not a ton from the call on this. One of our favorite topics on the pen is Retatrutide, Retatrutide, as they call it in the biz, but we call it Retatrutide over here, or Retatrutide. And we got a little bit of news, not a ton of news, but one of the things that I've been telling you for a while now is that with Retatrutide, it's got 2 clinical trials going on in parallel with each other, right? The triple G, the triple agonist. So you have GLP-1 and GIP with Mounjaro, plus you add the glucagon receptor, all 3 incretin hormones. So this is their triple agonist, right? It is actually the phase 3 trials for chronic weight management have already started with Retatrutide, but they have not started quite yet for type 2 diabetes. So those trials will be starting shortly. We learned that a couple calls ago, but they reiterated that. They are excited about phase 3. I think they're really excited about what this is doing to basically just melt liver fat. I think that is why we'll get into some of the positive news that was released about Tirzepatide and their NASH studies, but I think they're excited about what Tirzepatide is doing in fatty liver and NASH and MASH, but I think that Retatrutide will be sort of the king of the hill when it comes to liver, right? Taking care of sick livers in the form of NASH, non-alcoholic fatty liver, NASH, which would be, kind of the next stage. So you have stages of liver disease, right? The end one is cirrhosis, right? But in between there, you've got fatty liver and you've got NASH and you've got MASH and you've got different stages, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about what Tirzepatide trial showed that released. This is more great news for potential access to it through Medicare Part D. So there are ongoing trials for Retatrutide, so you can check those out. I usually link them in the description of my YouTube videos if you want to get involved in those. So that's pretty much all we heard on Retatrutide. But I can't wait till we start getting some data back from these phase 3 trials. That's going to be absolutely amazing. These are longer trials, I think 80 some weeks. So it's going to be a long time before we get readouts on these, but I'm excited for it nonetheless. So we're going to get into Tirzepatide, a little bit of Tirzepatide as far as the NASH trials and some of the other clinical trials that they're doing. But I just want to take a moment to check up with the chat. Thank you, Sue the Dude, for gifting a membership over on YouTube. Thank you. I saw a couple gifts come across the screen over on TikTok as well. So thank you for those who are giving gifts. It's always appreciated, but it's never expected. I do appreciate those of you who show their gratitude for the work that I do in that way. Thank you very much. Thank you also for all the likes and the shares and all that too. That helps this channel quite a bit. So thank you for that. So let's get into Tirzepatide. So Tirzepatide, we had positive results from the Synergy NASH phase 2 study of Tirzepatide for metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis, which is MASH. So basically what you have is, basically jacked up livers that are showing showing fibrosis, and they do this by actually biopsying the liver. So thank you for the gifts over on TikTok. And so basically, these trials are really tricky to run, and it came up later in the call, but these trials are really tricky to run because it requires the facilitators to actually take liver biopsies to check on, the progression of the disease, which is very costly, very time consuming, not only for the companies to run them, but for the patients in the clinical trials. And then what you have is ultimately people don't see results and they know they're on the placebo. So then the placebo people drop out, understandably, right? So this is these are really tricky trials to run. But basically what we saw is that the primary endpoints, which mean the goal of the study for the NASH study for tirzepatide, met it, and up to 74% of participants showed an absence of MASH with no worsening of fibrosis at 52 weeks versus the 13% on placebo. And one of the things that they casually mentioned there also is that they actually saw some people reverse the fibrosis to some extent, like whereas they may have been stage 2, right? And then they went back to stage 1, which is unheard of. This is not something that's been clinically shown before. So you see these GLP-1 medications are lining up to not only, reduce weight, chronic weight management, right, is the designation, but you see they're fixing metabolic disease. And this is one of the things where I got to get on my high horse and preach. So when I hear things go on in the media, like Tucker Carlson interviews Callie Means, and Callie Means says, all we're trying to do is throw medication at obesity. It's metabolic disease. People are sick. They need medicine to fix what is broken inside their body. You can change the environment all you want, but somebody still has NASH. Somebody still has MASH. And once your liver gets screwed up, everything, the wheels fall off metabolically, and people get sick. They get cancer. So this is about treating chronic disease. It is metabolic dysfunction. It is chronic disease that needs to be treated. And I get so excited on these earnings calls to hear such amazing news about these trials, because they're not even hyping this tirzepatide stuff too much, because they know that right behind it is Retatrutide, which is going to be even better, which is super, super exciting. The secondary endpoint meant that in this trial was seen across all doses, where people moved back at least one stage of fibrosis compared to placebo. So just amazing, amazing results, top line results from that trial. The rest of the trial data will be given out later this year, probably at the obesity. I don't know if they do like a liver, like a liver health conference, or perhaps at the obesity conference later this year. So we'll look forward to that. And, across those trials, for what it's worth, same kind of side effects as you experience in all the other trials where they try tirzepatide. So we're excited for those results to be presented later on this year. There's going to be other readouts that are coming beyond just NASH. This year you have, for tirzepatide, you have the Surpass 5 results that are going to come out, and that is studies of tirzepatide next to high-dose semaglutide, which I think they're expecting, obviously, tirzepatide to come out on top there. Let's see here. What else do we have? The other one, the cardiovascular disease. So again, so much good news baked in here I'm so thrilled to share this information for our friends who are on Medicare Part D, because this year we're going to have readouts on the heart failure studies in tirzepatide. We're going to have readouts on obstructive sleep apnea. And these readouts will hopefully help to broaden access to Mounjaro for Medicare Part D people who are not diabetic. That's huge news. Did you hear what I just said? If you are on Medicare Part D, later on in 2024, early 2025, you may have access to Mounjaro without having to wait for TROA to get passed. That is absolutely amazing news. Welcome to the stream, Elizabeth. Hey, if you're new here, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, and make sure you hit the like button, but also make sure you hit follow the live creator if you're on TikTok. Thank you for those who are giving gifts. I appreciate that. Very, very much appreciated. Lots of time and energy is put into these calls. I listened to this call twice today. I have a whole pile of notes here, and I still didn't get to everything I wanted to because we're going to have to go line by line, and I'm going to have to use my memory to go through the question. Thank you for the gifts. The heart was very cool. Mazdutide. Let's talk about Mazdutide. So this isn't, to me, a super exciting asset. Mazdutide is a GLP-1. Thank you, Sabrina. I appreciate that. Mazdutide is a GLP-1 that Eli Lilly retains the rights to sell in all the world except for China, and their partners on this. Innovent. Innovent is the partner that they're working with on Mazdutide. Just wrapped up a phase 3 trial in China, the Glory 1 study. This was a study done in Chinese adults with obesity. I don't have information on this trial, but just know that there's another Utide in the works from Eli Lilly. They don't spend a lot of time talking about it because how are you ever going to compete with what they're doing with Tirzepatide and Retatrutide and Orforglipron? But for what it's worth, that one advanced to phase 3 in China. So for our Chinese friends, perhaps you'll be able to get on a Utide. Okay, so that's what I got for the main. That was the beef, right? Where's the beef? That was the beef. That was Eli Lilly's portion of this earnings call, but arguably not the most exciting part of this earnings call. We still have to get to that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through here, and this might be a little bit clunkier because I got to pull up the notes here from. So we have basically a question and answer session that comes at the end of these calls where you have basically, it opens up to not the public, but basically investment houses that come with their questions for investors, right? And so we get some interesting questions at the end of these earnings calls. Let's see here. A lot of Medicare Part D stuff. We kind of covered that already. Some questions about the NASH trial and whether or not they found the reversal numbers of NASH to be statistically significant. I think they definitely do. There was questions that came up about whether they will advance the trials into phase 3 for NASH with Tirzepatide. And here's what I'm reading between the lines. I don't think they will. I don't think they will because I think they will with Retatrutide. And the trials are going to be so expensive and so costly to do. There's just no good way to do a NASH study where you have to biopsy thousands and thousands of people in a phase 3 clinical trial. That's just going to be a very difficult trial to run. And I think they will do it, but I think they'll do it with Retatrutide, which will be an absolute game changer, even better than Tirzepatide. But I think even with the phase 2 trial, it shows, hey, this is probably really good for people with liver disease. So very, very interesting stuff from the Tirzepatide trials that came out today. They talked again about how they are actually building infrastructure to build Orforglipron, even though it's only in phase 3. So two topics I want to make sure that I covered, and these did come towards the end. So the first topic is the topic of the Amgen drug that you saw. Allie with a $3 super sticker on YouTube. Thank you very much, Allie, for that. I appreciate that. Basically what you saw here was Amgen came out with their Mazdutide. Mazdutide. It sounds like, hey, Dustin, how are you tonight, buddy? It sounds like a nautical theme, Mazdutide. So with Mazdutide, you basically have a drug made by Amgen, which is a monoclonal antibody GLP-1. So in this GLP-1 that Amgen is making, so you have the monoclonal antibody as kind of what moves the medication through your body, and the payload is a GLP-1 receptor agonist and a GIP antagonist. So it's funny because we were just talking about this the other day on the podcast. The podcast is called On the Pen, the Weekly Dose. If you go to the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, you can go find On the Pen, the Weekly Dose, or you can just ask your spy device, hey, Alexa, play On the Pen, the Weekly Dose podcast, and she will. And so we talked about Mazdutide, and we talked about how it's interesting that they are blocking GIP receptors, where Tirzepatide is an agonist. So, I just found it weird that like we can mess with it either way, and as long as we're messing with it, it seems to work for weight loss. So that question sort of came up to the Eli Lilly team in the earnings call today, and I thought the answer was really, really good. So basically, here's what they said. They said that they have actually done, and I had forgot about this. Eli Lilly actually ran I think it was a phase 1 and a phase 2 trial, but it may have just been a phase 1 trial with just a GIP agonist. So no GLP-1, just GIP. They just had a single GIP agonist. And in that, they saw a reduction of weight. They saw less side effects than a GLP-1, and they saw a great improvement in lipids, right? Cholesterol, triglycerides. So they saw all this in GIP agonism. So what they're saying is we have tens of thousands of people through Tirzepatide trials. We have the GIP trials as a standalone, enough to tell us that GIP agonism seems to be really, really good at pairing with GLP-1 to minimize side effects, improve weight loss, and improve the side effect profile. He said, I think what you'll see, and he had been kind of digging into the data, obviously a lot more than I have. I hope he would, as probably a buku millionaire CEO. But he basically said, as you increase the GIP antagonist in the trials, you actually saw an increase in lipids, an increase in side effects, and so he stood by the fact that it seems like GIP, it seems like it's very clear that their gamble on GIP agonism paid off. But I think if you're reading the tea leaves here, it's just kind of interesting that nobody really knows why. Like, that's what I haven't heard, and that's what's fascinating. So that's the interesting thing on Mazdutide. It sounds like they are very confident that the GLP-1 agonism is the way to go. And if you're taking Tirzepatide and semaglutide, you understand why. So that was very interesting. Now, it was brought up very late in the call about Novo Nordisk's acquisition of Catalent. So Catalent is a company that I've actually covered on the pen going back to the late summer of last year, early fall of last year, because Catalent is a major supplier, finisher and filler of pens for Wegovy and Ozempic. And they had troubles with their Belgium plant keeping it clean, and this really impacted the Wegovy supply last year, led to a lot of the shortages, not 100%, but let's say contributed to a lot of shortages. It looks like Sue the Dude had an injury. I'm sorry to hear that, buddy. I hope you're feeling better. Hope you're getting around all right. But basically what you have here is a major, lost my train of thought. I'm thinking about Sue getting hurt now. Man, I hope you're all right, buddy. It's Sabrina with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much for that. So Catalent was unable to basically keep up with the dose, and this contributed to the shortages of Wegovy. So what you saw this week was Novo Nordisk went ahead and announced that they are acquiring Catalent for $16 billion. So what we learned about in the Lilly call is Lilly ain't going to let that happen easily. They are definitely going to fight this. The FTC will probably get involved here for a couple reasons. What we learned on this is that Catalent makes medications for Eli Lilly. Not only do they make medications for Eli Lilly, but they do some of the filling of the pens for the clinical trial. So when you read in between the lines, talking about, $16 billion, no big deal. You're talking about basically clinical trial drugs. So Retatrutide or Orforglipron, probably just the injector pen. So probably Retatrutide, Tirzepatide for sure. They know how the pens are made. They know the recipes. They know all of the proprietary information that Eli Lilly holds is now in possession of their direct competitor. How about that? So Eli Lilly, not thrilled, not thrilled. Ozita Cooper became a member. Thank you for becoming a member. Hey, on YouTube and TikTok, if you'd like to become a member, subscriber on TikTok, you can hit the little star up there and become a subscriber over on TikTok. If you want to become a member on YouTube, you can click the link in the description. Members on YouTube get access to custom videos, custom emojis. Let me see those custom emojis in the chat here. But yeah, so you're talking about a major conflict of interest with Catalent holding all that intellectual property of Eli Lilly, and now it could potentially all be in the hands of their largest competitor. So very interesting stuff there. So this is the point of the conversation where I'd like to hear from you and hear what you thought was interesting in this call. Let me make sure that I didn't have anything else in my notes that I wanted to make sure I covered. But if you have questions about anything that you heard in the call or anything that you thought or saw that was interesting, let me know. Pretty much covered it all here. That was a lot of Dave talking. Thank you all for being here in the chat tonight. Thank you for the dropping the emojis in the chat. Yeah, all right, lipstick, my love language. That's awesome. Very cool. Thank you for those who are members on both sides. It supports the work that I do, right? Hey, Pagan Mounjaro, how are you, buddy? Very cool, very cool. Somebody also, I think it was Clark Kent, who was using the analogy of Microsoft and their acquisition of, who was it? It's escaped me. But there's lots of examples in big business where you just see these major acquisitions happen. Hopefully somebody will step in, because I don't think this is probably very good for Eli Lilly. But yeah, somebody also posited that these kind of issues that come up tend to be better for the consumer than anything. So we'll see. Closer said, "Look, Mom, I'm an emoji." So tonight, Sue the Dude celebrated 12 months. He's been a member for 12 months. So thank you, dude, for being a member. Allie gave a $3 super sticker. Sabrina, $10 super chat. And Ozita became a new member. So thank you. If you gave gifts over on TikTok, thank you as well. This is our on the pen for the week, right? This was a lot of prep work for me to get this ready. I mean, just a ton of work goes into it. Michelle, hey, welcome back. Good to see you. Thank you for the $9.99 super sticker. I really appreciate that. Very kind of you. But this is our on the pen for the week. And yeah, now's the time to drop any questions in the chat if you have any. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. I really appreciate being here with you tonight and every night. This was a really great call. Very interactive in the chat too. Thank you all. Hagar's back. Welcome, buddy. You have a great night too, Puggers. Good to see you, bud. Am I on Mounjaro yet? Okay, yeah. So great question. So Matt, I owe you a long form video on the transition. I just was talking with the doctor tonight, and the script is being sent in tomorrow for the 12.5 milligram Mounjaro. So I will be back on Mounjaro. I am ready for it. Ozempic's doing absolutely nothing for me at this point. It's like I'm immune to it. It's not doing anything for my sugars, and yeah. So I will be back on Mounjaro. I feel like I cheated on Mounjaro for the last 2 months. Actually got some pretty funny content I'm thinking of to make some funny videos. So Eunice dreamed about coworkers 30 years ago at job dreams. Yeah, some of these people that go on the pen kind of talk about like these fever dreams that they have. Have I ever thought of rotating 12-15 to trick your system? I don't know what that even means. Yvonne, semaglutide works better for some people. I would say for the vast majority it does not, but I had to give it a try, and I think, you know, if anything, I thought at the end of a couple months I will have had the Mounjaro out of my system, and maybe it'll hit different when I go back on it. So we'll see. Jennifer, Nebraska says, she's having these really realistic dreams too. They're always about what she reads before bed, and she's been reading murder mysteries. So she, and she said the romance novel about killed her. Oh my goodness. It's getting after hours over here now. Would I consider starting lower? No, not really, because I did that before. I started at the 5 milligram. I restarted Mounjaro once at the 5 milligram. I just didn't get any therapeutic benefits from it at the 5. So I thought I'll go on the 12. If the 12, I'll start higher because I didn't just know I tolerate it well. I don't think it would be beneficial for me to start that low. I think it would be a wasted month. Tammy smoked a cigarette the first time in 20 years in her dream last night. Yeah, Deborah says Zepbound did almost $200 million in sales in 1 month. It absolutely did. Yeah, we covered that a little bit earlier. Rotating. Are you talking about rotating the doses? Candor wants to know if I've seen any data on larger doses of Mounjaro being used. Yeah, that's a clinical trial right now. It's currently happening for high-dose Tirzepatide. The thing that we do not know is what those doses are. My assumption with those doses is that they are actually probably 17.5 and 20 milligram, because we do know that it's 2 doses. But that is just, they've followed these 2.5 increments. And so I think they'll probably continue to do that, but I can't be 100% sure, obviously. But they are doing high dose Tirzepatide trials. Sabrina says, give me 30 milligrams. I 100% agree with that. Why do they consider 2.5 non-therapeutic scientifically? So I don't know that they, I use that nomenclature or that verbiage when I talk about the 2.5 as well. It's considered non-therapeutic only because it wasn't measured in clinical trials. It was given to basically as a lower dose to test people's reaction to the molecule. But a lot of people who are sensitive to the medication respond really well to it. I've literally heard of people staying on 2.5 for 8 months and losing 100 pounds. So, conversely, I've heard people that don't feel anything until they get to 10, 12.5 or 15. So they hit people differently. A lot of people call it the 2.5 a loading dose. It's not a loading dose. Loading doses work the exact opposite, in fact. A loading dose is like something you do with an intense antibiotic where you front load the dose, like you take a really, really high dose and then you titrate down. That's what a loading dose is. So it's neither a loading dose or really non-therapeutic. It's just considered non-therapeutic because it wasn't considered in the clinical trials. It wasn't measured in the clinical trials. OG Bell says, I'd advocate for daily doses. Yeah. Like prednisone, right? Matt over on YouTube has lost 150 pounds in 7 months and has never gone higher than 5 milligrams. Yeah, Candor says, usually those who are not diabetic can do that on the lower doses. Those who are diabetic respond differently to Mounjaro. And I'm diabetic, and I 100% agree with that. And the clinical trials agree with us too. That's interesting, Cody. Very interesting. Pug's down 194 pounds, down to 194 pounds, down 281 pounds. That's insane, dude. Congratulations. All right. Well, hey, 96 people in the chat. Make sure you hit that like, hit that bell, hit that sub, especially if you're new here. It's been great recapping the news today from Eli Lilly, the 2023 quarter 4 earnings call that took place today. I hope that this has been informational. I hope it's been helpful. If it has been helpful, if you appreciate my work, consider becoming a member on the channel. You can do that for just $2.99 a month on YouTube. You get access to custom emojis, custom videos. For $5.99, I think you can do it on TikTok. It's just a way to give back to the work that I do. If you appreciate it, thank you for those who gave super chats tonight. Thank you for Stu the Dude for being a member for a year now. Not only for being a member of the year, but being basically what makes this chat and this community great. So thank you for being here, buddy. Appreciate you. We will catch you all on the next stream. Thanks for joining tonight. I hope you all have a great evening. Take care till we see you next week on the pen. See you next week, friends. Appreciate y'all.